You're the guy that I always think of when you well, first of all, when you teach your academy. I had no idea you had so many affirmations, but you put that stuff out there and legitimately you get what you put out there. I mean, and the house is like one of the things for me. I'm like, holy crap, like you really do put that stuff out there. And even if it means you break escrow for other people, not you do it personally, but it falls apart and you got that home because of that, which I think is cool.
Well, I look at everything as, I don't want to sound like egotistical or whatever, but I've always gotten everything I've ever wanted. Sometimes even stuff I didn't want that I thought I wanted. But but it's mostly by putting it out there, and you have to almost declare it, and think about it. And yeah, things really do line up for me, and it's not. And when I say everything I wanted, not even material things, just the way I want things to happen. Stuff a lot of times happen exactly how I affirm it.
Yeah. And I think that's something that not everybody understands. Like you hear, years ago, you heard about that book, The Secret, right? And everybody is like, oh, if you manifest it, it comes into you. But it's something more than that, right? What I thought was really cool is you have done affirmations like all your adult life, which is what, like 15 years?
So I started them. So I first learned about affirmations. It would have been 15, 20, 23, 24 years ago. And even before that, I'd heard of them, but I thought, no, I wasn't ready to hear them.
Yeah.
And I bought into a real estate franchise, and when I went to broker owner training, they talked about the affirmations, and I started writing them, and it was amazing how it just changes things. And there was a trainer that his name was Bill Nasby, and he would tell me basically you have a choice every day. You can wake up in a good mood or a bad mood, or you can have a positive, productive day, or you can complain all day, but ultimately it's your choice. And I've even read books, and I think I read somewhere or made this up, that, if you can't have a negative and positive thought at the same time or your brain will explode.
Yeah.
You can only be one way or the other. So
yeah.
I just chose to think positively and really think about what I want. And sometimes I'm not even sure how it all comes together, but it does.
I mean, truly, that situation with the house was because it was in escrow with another buyer, and you had said, hey, I'm going to buy that home, but I won't buy it for X amount of dollars until it hits X amount of dollars. And then it went into escrow, and then the escrow fell apart, and you're like, I am about to buy this home.
So they were asking significantly more.
Yeah.
They did a price reduction. It went into escrow. They did an appraisal. The appraisal came in low. So they agreed to sell it at that price. And so at that point, they had a contingent on sale, and so now it was down at the price or close to the price I wanted it.
Right.
So I submitted an offer. They couldn't perform, and I moved in there.
Yeah.
Now, it wasn't exactly the price I wanted, but if you back out the commission that was paid on it,
yeah,
it basically was almost to the penny of where I wanted to offer.
Yeah, and I think that alone is just something that, people don't understand the power of really putting that stuff out there. And I don't know if that was something you did affirmations on or...
Didn't write it, but you think about it, right?
Yeah.
And it's even as a kid, when you think about it and you read the stories of, I want that red bike or whatever, and you think about it and you think about it and you think about it and you end up getting it. And you just, as you think about it, you start to align things, or you do activities or things that put you in the path so that you achieve those things. Yeah. I mean, it's been the same way even with real estate offices, There was a point when I was an independent broker. I had a business partner. His name was Andy. We owned Infinity Real Estate Group in Salt Lake. And we went down this path of we kept wanting to grow, and we'd take on more space and stuff like that. And we weren't really growing to the matter that we wanted, but we decided one day, we just said, we had 4,200 square feet of office space. Most of it was hallway, and it was me and him walking around. Yeah, and we made a decision one day that basically, I'd always wanted to build like a mega brokerage or a big office, and it wasn't working that way. But we made a decision that day to actually close that down, go work out of our own basements because we could make more money than floating all this. And that very day, I got an invitation to go to a basketball game and hear about this new real estate franchise. We went to it, and that's what spurred the growth and everything else that changed. So
Wow.
by continually thinking and not being tied to what's happening here, just remembering your goal and being open to things, things appear to you, and you take the opportunity.
Yeah.
And I think everybody has this gift or this ability, but I don't think a lot of people are in tune to it, or it doesn't appear exactly how they wanted it to appear. Like, if somebody was going to buy that house, I want to buy it at this price, you'd want the price to come down to that price.
Yeah,
right?
true.
And then, okay, I buy it. Well, I never reached there, but through circumstances, it got there.
Right.
So you're just being open to things.
But I don't think it's, for those watching or listening, it's not like, hey, I'm going to just do this, and all of a sudden I think about it and it doesn't happen, or it does happen, or whatever the case is. It definitely has a foundation of belief and, like you said, opening it up. This being one of them. So starting this podcast was something I've put out there for a while, and some of it is just taking action too, right? But it's also being open to different things. And I've had an opportunity to kind of watch different YouTubers and really understand what kind of a sit down and session I really wanted it to be like. And so this kind of came to fruition. So before we get much further, let me at least do a nice formal introduction for you. So everyone, this is my dear friend, Brandon Roberts. He is the co-founder, owner of Signature Real Estate Group. One of the great pleasures we are, as this probably airs, it'll probably be after you become the president, right, of Las Vegas Real Estate Association. But you're also a huge mentor to me and obviously a dear friend. And so I thank you for being my first person I get to interview and starting my podcast. But you shared a little bit about your history, right? So you started in the industry, was it Infinity? Was that your first?
I got licensed in 1996.
1996, okay.
And I was an agent for 5 years. And then after 5 years, me and a fellow agent went out and opened Infinity Real Estate Group.
Okay.
And so I've been an independent broker basically ever since.
And then when you got invited to the basketball game, what made you jump from that to, because that was a pretty big shift, right? Just coming from individual agent to, I'm going to go and open up all of these different offices.
So really interesting things. So Andy, who was my business partner at the time, when he first started at the company I was at, I couldn't stand the guy. We ended up becoming pretty good friends and actually going into business together. But in doing that, it was it's amazing how you meet the right people and that type of stuff. So when I'd been selling for 5 years, and then I had an opportunity to go sell ATM machines, and it had just became legal in Utah that a business could own their own ATM machine, and so we worked for a company, and you were able to go out and they could lease these machines, and the business would make some credit card or transaction fees, right?
Okay.
They had to stock it with their own money, but they made the fees on it, and this company would guarantee the lease basically to cover
the space,
the lease payment.
Oh, okay, for the ATM.
Yeah, because they would guarantee you'd make enough to cover that, or they'd cover the difference. Well, the company made one critical flaw was the fact that they didn't really set too much criteria on where they were placing these things, So, you put one in a laundromat that nobody's going to use and stuff like that. So anyway, that company ended up going into bankruptcy and ended up stiffing me and Andy, because as I was selling them, I was starting to make a lot of money. And I brought Andy and I said, hey, do you want to do these with me? And so we started going on, and then we said, they would set appointments we go on. So then we hired a girl to call, so we got more appointments. And then we had so many appointments, we started bringing in other agents, and we had the sales force out there selling these machines, because we'd make $3,000, $4,000, $5,000 on placing these machines.
Wow.
Well, they owed us about $80,000, and they went belly up. And at that point, I was like, we understand real estate, and we know how to do this, build this team and stuff. Let's go back into real estate where we can actually control it, because you control the commissions. It's not a third-party company.
Yeah.
So we did, and that's when we launched Infinity Real Estate Group and grew that a little bit. But it wasn't making any money, and we were actually going broke. And so at the time, we got that invitation. I'm like, it's a basketball game. I didn't go there to look at the franchise. I mean, we went
For
to watch
Utah
the
Jazz.
Lakers and the Jazz play,
Yeah.
and it was Karl Malone's homecoming game, who'd been with the Lakers forever.
That's what you remember about the event. Not
Right.
that it
Well,
was
that's the only reason I'd went, because I
Yeah.
could care less about the Lakers. I mean, sorry. Sorry, Beta. But when we were there, it was they give the presentation. The CEO or the founder of the company did his thing, and at the end of it, Andy goes, "We have to do this," and I'm like, "What do you mean?" Like, I didn't see
even
it.
then you weren't.
No, I have this vision, but when you talk about taking action, sometimes you need somebody to help you take that action.
Agreed.
And Andy was that. We have to do this. How much? Well, franchise law, they can't just tell you how much. They got to disclose you, right? And so he starts asking questions. So they take us over to Spencer Kimball, who you know,
Yep.
who was the regional owner at that time. And they said, these guys want to know how much. And Spencer goes, where's your tickets? Well, we had nosebleed tickets. We were just filler people for the room. He switches us and put us in a suite. Okay. He had like 4 suites that night. And we never talked to Spencer again that night. But the really cool thing is the person that we talked to all night was Alex Sinek.
Oh.
Alex was there wearing his yellow shirt, said, don't be left in the dark. And he laid the whole thing out for us.
So he was also a regional, or was he?
He was a
an
regional.
owner?
He owned Nevada and Hawaii.
Oh,
and he
I
was
didn't
there
know that.
supporting Alex. But Alex becomes one of my great mentors in life, one of
Yeah.
my great friends. Think of him as a real father figure, and it has really helped me out a ton. But that's the guy that was there, right?
Oh.
And so we go through the process and we buy that franchise. Well, we wanted to buy that franchise. We find out it's $25,000. I don't have $25,000. Do you have $25,000, Andy? He goes, no. And so we also have to do some stuff to the office set up to grow. So we determined we need 50 grand. And I said, well, that's the end of that. We don't have 50 grand. He goes, no, we need to ask everyone we know. And I'm like, well, hey, that's not in my comfort zone at all,
Yeah.
right? And so he starts asking people, and I ask a couple people, and there was a guy, his name was Kyle, who I'd met 2 weeks before. He was a hard money lender. 2 weeks before, and I said, hey, would you be interested in investing in a real estate company, blah, blah, blah. And he goes, I said, the guy's coming back to town. I'd like you to come listen to it. So he came and he sits there and listens to it. The next day he sits down with me, and then, mind you, I only knew this guy for 2 weeks. And he says, we don't loan on this kind of stuff. We loan on real estate, and we got to have assets. And he goes, but I believe in you, and I'm going to give you the money.
Wow.
And he did, right? And so that was launching it. But again, that was stepping out of my comfort zone and staying with it and going down that path. And so we took 25, bought the franchise, took the other 25, bought cubicles and stuff, filled the office for growth. And it was still the same 2 guys, the same office, and we went crazy and just built because we had a system or we had a direction, and we hired Alex as a coach, and we just did what we were supposed to do every day, and it took off.
Wow. So what brought you to Vegas? Did you take over? Because I know that's how you and I met, right? Was you were opening here in Las Vegas or Nevada?
Yeah, so I went through the process. We had our one office, and talk about vision. It's like when we bought that, we said we want to be in this building down here, and it's where our Salt Lake office is today with Signature. We want to be in this building.
That's right.
And so we had them adjust the franchise grid. So we were on the very edge here where our one office was, but we wanted to be here. So we started telling agents we're going into that building. As soon as we get enough agents, we're going into that building. We had about 75, 80 agents. We're like, okay, it's time to go in that building. So I went down there to talk to them, and they says, we have no space in this building. I went, oh, no. I've been recruiting to this building. And they said, but we're building another one right across the parking lot. I said, fantastic. We'll go there. So I said, so we took pictures of the other building it was going to look like, and we kept recruiting. They're building our building. We're going into this building. Well, I made one mistake. I never signed a lease or a letter of intent or anything else. So when it was almost done, I went down there and I says, okay, we'd like to look at space in the building. And they go, there's no space in the new building.
They sold out.
Yeah. And I said, you're kidding. He says, no, but the original building I wanted to be in, the whole 3rd floor is available because Overstock.com just moved into the new building.
Wow.
So I got in the actual building I wanted to be in. And so it worked out.
That's your affirmation again. Did you do that? Lay it out there for it to be out there?
Well, we had charts. We had pictures of this.
Yeah.
I mean, that's what we were
Recruiting
building
all that?
to. Yeah.
Yeah.
And so then I had we made our application, and we're still a young company and we're growing, but we don't have lots of reserves and everything like that. And I remember putting in the application. Well, they called me in, right? So I go down to the building, I sit down, I go into the boardroom, and there's the owner of the building, like 3 attorneys, and the property manager lady. And they said, we appreciate you wanting to come in here, but we don't really qualify.
Oh, financials?
And I said, well, let me tell you where we're going. Let me tell you where we've been and where we're going. And I went through the process, told them my story and that type of stuff. And they all stepped out. And then the owner and the attorney came back in, and the owner says, I like to take chances on new companies. We did it with JetBlue. We did it with Overstock.com, and now we're going to do it with you.
Wow.
And I'm just like floored.
That's
right?
awesome.
And so
Yeah.
they gave us a space. Granted, they held our commissions and everything else for collateral, and we had to put a little bit more money down, but they gave us the opportunity.
Opportunity, for
And when they
sure.
did that, we started to grow. And then I had an argument with another franchisee over recruiting, and I was like, we're just going to blow this whole thing up. We're going to start recruiting from all the other offices. Spencer pulls us in, talks me off the ledge. I went back to my business partners at the time, and they said, how'd it go? I said, well, it went good. We have a peace treaty, but we just need to buy them all. We just need to own Salt Lake County. And I said, we'll buy this one, we'll buy that one, we'll buy this one, and then we'll get this other one, which was the next biggest one. And within 2 weeks, the one I thought we'd buy last called me and said, would you be interested in purchasing us?
Really?
And we ended up with 5 offices up there, merging and acquiring them. And in 2007, I was awarded Broker of the Year for Exit International.
Wow.
Broker of the Year, over 1,500 offices in the U.S. and Canada.
Wow.
At that same conference, that's when we signed the documents to become the regional owner down here. Because again, when I said earlier that
Alex,
be careful what you think about.
Oh,
you get
yeah,
it?
yeah.
I'm like, what's the next logical step? Regional ownership. That's what I want to do. And within a week, Spencer says, do you want to buy Nevada? Because Spencer had bought it off of Alex. And so I did. And and I thought, how hard could it be to sell franchises? I'll just run my offices up here and go down Vegas a week here and a week there and sell an office or two.
You did that?
No, this was 2007.
Oh, when everything started to crumble?
2008. By my first trip down here, I realized, what the hell did I do? You know what I mean? I just put a ton of money towards something that's crashing. I'm going down there to open real estate offices when everyone's closing. The number 1 Century 21 in the world was here at the time. Advantage Gold filed bankruptcy.
I didn't know
Prudential at
that.
the time filed Chapter 11 bankruptcy. I mean, these big companies are closing down and all that stuff. And I'm like, what the heck did I do? So ended up selling out of those offices, and I moved here. And that's to build.
That was 08?
To build it out, yeah.
Yeah. And that's, because when you and I met in 2012, when you were chapter president here, so you'd been here for a few years, right? You were chapter president of
2013.
Yeah, WCR. Okay, so then it was maybe the year after, but you had already been established as the regional down here, and you'd had a few offices by that time, right?
So I got really lucky by meeting the right people.
Yeah.
And when I say that, Vandana, she was one of my first franchise sales. And I met her. She was pregnant with Veer, her second child. And they bought, but I met them because their cousin owned a franchise in California, and he referred them to me.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Trish Nash was already a franchisee down here when I came. So she was still trying to figure things out a little bit and grow a brokerage. But Vandana opened a lot of doors by introducing me to a lot of people. One of the people was Valerie Grijalva.
Yep.
Met her right off the bat, and she opened doors for me. So the 5 years that I was pushing that brand, we opened 6 offices, and none of them were really big, right? Because I was looking for a broker like me that wanted to build something big.
Yeah.
And what you were finding at that time was people that wanted teams that wanted to open offices, but they didn't have these big visions. And so that was all laying the foundation really for Signature without even knowing it. Because I wanted to build something big down here. I just didn't know how that was going to happen.
So you made the transition then. Did you just completely walk away from the previous brokerage and then you just started Signature? Because this is, I mean, it's just you and Mike, right? As far as the vision and getting it going.
I was going through leadership, the state leadership program at the time this was happening. Women's Council president, state leadership, and I was, and the regional ownership thing was imploding on me. And what I mean by that is I had a disagreement or an issue with International. And it came to a point where I was going to a regional meeting or a broker meeting with my agents, and International had called all of them and basically told them that you're no longer to pay him. We're changing the system. Everything needs to come up here.
Wow.
And the reason being is, I don't want to really get into it. I felt like they'd breached the contract. They felt like I had breached the contract. And so at that point, my income level stopped. And I wasn't making a ton of money, but I was getting a little small override, $75 a transaction closed out here. And that's how I was kind of surviving. So there was a 6-month period where we were threatening lawsuits and stuff like that, where I had no money to really sue them, but and they knew that. But I was not making any money because I was also in a 15-year contract that I couldn't do anything. And so
like non-compete?
Yeah, non-compete, but also, because I'm still the owner of it, even though I'm not making any money.
Yeah.
And so I'm really getting to a real low point in my life, to the point where I'm basically making a decision to go live in my car. That's how bad it was getting. And it was probably one of the hardest times in my life, but one of the best times in my life. Alex actually had a house in the Northwest that he needed a short sell. He had somebody in there leasing it, but the guy left early, so he said, you can stay there until you sell it. And so he let me list it and negotiate the sale. That took me about a 6-month period to do that, and that commission is really what sprungboard me into being able to survive to get Signature going.
Wow.
But in the leadership program, I'd met somebody there, and I started talking to that person about opening an office. Not for me, for them, and I was going to help build it and run it, right? It initially started, I was trying to sell them one of those franchises, but it didn't go. And as we were down here, Mike, I don't know why, but he kept showing up, right?
Because people just show up in your lives and stuff happens. Yeah.
But he'd come from time to time down here, and
he likes Vegas.
And he was in town, and I said, we're going to look at some space, and it was the Summerlin office, and we were walking in there, and he pulls me aside, and he says, if you don't do something with her, I'd like to do something with you. And I'm like, okay. And as we were doing the lease negotiations, she wasn't moving very fast, right? And I'm on this timeline, like I'm trying to figure out, am I moving back to Salt Lake? Am I opening an office? Am I moving to another state? What am I doing, Yeah. And so I picked up the phone and called Mike, and I said, were you serious? And he said, yeah. And I says, great. I'm going to have them send over a lease that I need you to sign. And he said, okay. And so I said, well, this will be the test. And he'd committed to put the money in, and I would do the work, and we'd be 50-50 partners on it. And so I hung up the phone. I called the leasing agent. I said, I need you to switch the name from that person to this person, and we'll sign the lease. And he said, okay, I'm going to need some financials on you. And I said, I don't have any. And he said, okay. And I said, Mike can provide you some financials. And we went down that path, and Mike signed the lease. They approved it, and away we ran.
Wow. And that began Signature Real Estate Group.
And Mike was there also as I'm going through this time, and we're cooking steaks, and we're hanging out at Alex's nice pool and nice house with no furniture. And
I didn't know that
drinking
story,
a little bit. Mike's there and helping me kind of design this company.
Yeah.
Right, so it wasn't like I had this. I mean, he had a big part in the.
I've heard about all the window writing, the dry erase on the windows.
Dry erase, but I was taking pictures of the dry erase boards, and that became really our business plan. But it was just interesting how that all kind of worked out.
So the one thing I'm hearing from you though is like the right people came into your life, but you had to really be open to it. But I also think some of it is you knowing what you needed out of those people, right, that came into your life. Because I think you and I, we met And that was even random too, because I was at an open house. The initial meeting between the three of us was, I was at an open house, I think for one of your agents. You guys had stopped by. Mike was there. And I was with a different business partner at the time. And you were looking for partnership with a mortgage company at the time. We were with a different company. And I was more of a manager, helping to support, same thing, to support. And so that's when I first met Mike. And then I left that company and I went to a different company to just be a complete originator. And I walked into the grand opening of your second office, which was the Green Valley office. And that's where our relationship kind of started, really. I mean, we knew each other. I'd known you from the past, and Vaughn ended up being the person who kind of connected us, and Valerie, because I think she was your... what did she do for WCR for you? She was
my events coordinator.
Yeah. And I remember her, because she was very influential for...
Amazing.
Yeah.
I wouldn't have made it through. There was two people, Phyllis Duran and Valerie,
Oh,
are
Phyllis,
the only ones that helped me through that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and you're the only guy that has ever taken on that seat here in Vegas, right? It's always been
I
women
messed
now.
it up so bad they won't bring on another one.
Exactly. Well, so I think that's kind of just speaking to like how important it is to really know that the connections, people you're connecting with today, you never know what that's going to look like for you in the future, but look at the opportunities it has presented to you when you're open to it, and you can see, and you're also open to connecting with people, because a lot of people today don't do that. You know what I mean?
And I don't do it enough. And it's sad because it's like everything that's happened, it's been from meeting people, right?
Yeah.
But yet I get kind of an introvert and shield myself from putting myself out there a lot. And that's something I struggle with. But the thing with The Secret, I wanted to bring this up, is the thing that drove me nuts about that book was it almost made it like you felt like all you had to do is think about something. You could stay home, sit on the couch, and eat bonbons, and it would happen. Yeah. You still have to take action.
Correct.
Right? And so, and then you meet the right people, and they open the doors, and then you have to, even though you meet the right people, you still have to step through those doors.
Yeah, correct. Yeah, because I mean, I could see that too. If you didn't have the courage or want to really take action, even with changing the lease and all that stuff, this could have been a completely different story, right? The whole signature could have been something that never really came to fruition. So I agree wholeheartedly on that. So just to shift things a little bit, because now that you're the LVR president, or you obviously have been extroverted enough to have gotten us elected to be the president of the LVR, which is a big accomplishment. What do you see for yourself in doing that this year?
So, I was pushed into things that put me in front of the people to get me there.
Oh, okay.
Pushed into being Women's Council president, pushed into running for the board of directors, and then you start to build the relationships.
Yeah.
Like I build relationships with people once I feel comfortable and kind of know each other.
Yeah.
And then over time, I grow on you, I guess. But so that's how I did that. I would have never just come into this market and
jump right in there.
No, and in fact, it's funny. I was talking to somebody just the other day, and it's like I moved here in 2008. It's 2021.
Yeah.
And I still think like I'm new to town, but I've been here a long time.
Yeah.
And so over that period of time, I've met the right people and things have lined up to do that. I've never had aspirations of doing it. Now I'm very excited to do it. I think we can do some good things, and we can make a big difference in our real estate community and our board to set us up for the future.
So what do you see yourself? Because I even in being a small trade organization, I felt like 1 year is just not enough. You know what I mean? So what do you see? Because you've been in the executive board as a president-elect, correct?
Yeah.
So what do you see yourself, doing, or what kind of momentum do you see happening today while you're in that executive board?
So the executive
position?
board is important because you're trying to set up some congruency, and you're hoping that your presidents that you bring in, you line up, and your executive board have kind of a vision of moving forward. Because you're right, you can't do a lot of things in 1 year, and you can't really instrument a lot of change. In fact, a lot of the things that we're talking about doing during my year won't happen for years down the road. So it'll be something that we start or we push towards, but ultimately it'll come to fruition under someone else's year, which is fine. When you look at even the building of the new building, I mean, that started years back. And Chris Bishop, when he becomes president, he's the one that moves into the building. So we actually moved in the building under his year.
And everybody thought it was him.
But it was started years before, right?
Yeah, transition
with
out.
the land and everything else.
Yeah.
So you just don't even know where that's going to be. So I'm very fortunate that Aldo, the current president, I agree with a lot of what he's doing in the direction on technology and stuff that he's wanted to go. And he's been very open to hearing what I wanted to start and allowing me to start some of that foundation through the year. And hopefully Lee coming behind me can get up to times and I'm kidding because he was president like 20 years ago, right?
Yeah, bounce back.
So he's coming back through.
Yes.
And it's going to be a whole different business than it was 20 plus years ago.
Yeah.
So that's why I joke about that. But hopefully he comes along with that and continues on that vision, and whoever comes after him, and then we can actually do something great.
Well, he'll have a year with you to kind of get acclimated to things that you guys are looking to do. So technology, what kind of things are you looking to kind of bring in this year, or as you say, years down the road, what are you wanting to have happen with it?
So the funny thing is years ago when I came here, I applied to be on the MLS board or the MLS committee at the time. And when I first put in my application, I didn't qualify because I hadn't been here long enough or on a committee or something like that. So they kicked me out. So then a few years later, there was an opening, and so I said, I want to run. So I put my name in the hat, and they have an interview because it wasn't the election. Somebody had vacated a seat, and they're bringing them in partially through the year. And one of the questions they asked me is, what would you change? And I said, well, I think you're crazy for buying your MLS through a third party. I think we should develop our own MLS and go down this path. Needless to say, they kind of snickered or whatever, and I didn't make the board. But now, as things have progressed, they're seeing more and more that we need to be more of a technology provider, not a buyer.
Yeah.
And the board and the MLS in the past has really been purchasers. We buy a lot of product through CoreLogic. Mm-hmm. I mean, we got Remind, we got Realist, we got all kinds of stuff. And Remind's not owned by CoreLogic, but we buy a lot of stuff, showing time, showing apps, all this stuff for our agents. But we're kind of held hostage to those other companies. And one of the frustrations is being that they always continue to give you more free stuff to extend your contract, but we're losing control of our data, right? So nothing's free. They're taking that data and they're making money on it, analytics, whatever. And so it's about trying to get that data back. And a lot of people say, well, that ship sailed. Well, it hasn't, because every day we continue to put more data into our stuff and we're giving that away. We can pull that back and control that. And so we're taking steps now to try to get more in that direction. Are
there other boards across the country that are not utilizing other vendors and such?
So
that are successful?
There's a big thing. I always thought that NAR, National Association of Realtors, should do this.
Yeah.
Right? But a lot of boards have an issue with that, like Big Brother. Just like agents with their broker.
Yeah.
I don't want to use your product because you're getting all my information or whatever. I don't, why would you work for me if you don't trust me? But I get it. You want to go spend your own money. You want to have control of your stuff, and that's perfectly fine. But they're not doing it. And so it brings it down to it's more on a board level. And you look at, I came from Salt Lake, and in 1996 when I got my license, the MLS looked a lot different. It had a blinking cursor, and you typed in codes, and you got printouts of data, and you tore off the little sheets on the side.
I was going to say dot matrix or whatever they call it.
And it was switching though, because Utah started to develop their own. It was the Wasatch Front Regional MLS, and then it went web-based, and they've owned their own MLS basically from way back then as they've been building it. So it's this awesome thing now, or this big conglomerate in. With good and bad code, because it's probably got millions of lines because they've been working on it forever. But Houston also does, right? Houston has their own thing, and they compete with some of these third-party portals real good. And Salt Lake does. And then what you're seeing now is actually MLSs and boards joining together to buy technology, to develop technology. And I'll give you an example. There was 4 MLSs and boards basically that just purchased Remine. They came together and bought that product, right? And so that changes the dynamic of it in front. Instead of owning something that somebody else is going to buy and you don't know who's going to own it, to now they're controlling it.
Yeah.
The other thing that's happening is they're putting these groups together that when things get more regionalized, which I think they will, I think the smaller boards are going to have to go into more regions and stuff. They're already positioned to do it. They'll be able to move real fast.
So in Nevada how many regions do we have for different MLS boards? Is it just Northern Nevada and Southern?
So we have 3 MLSs in Nevada.
Oh, okay.
We have Northern Nevada Regional MLS, which the northern part of the state has.
Yeah,
we
right
have ours here, and then Mesquite has one.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it's provided by their Chamber of Commerce.
Oh. So do you see coming together as...
Ideally, I think it would be smart.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? But you get this mentality of, I want to protect my area. So Mesquite wants to protect their area, keep everyone outside from coming in. And I saw this in Utah, too, with Park City.
Yeah.
Park City had its own MLS, and they really fought hard to keep everyone else out of selling in their area. And I get it. But yeah, I think it'd be smarter if it was more statewide.
So with Mesquite, is it something that they developed themselves? Because I would have thought...
The Chamber did.
Really?
They didn't develop it. I think they buy maybe like Flex MLS or something
Oh,
and
okay.
provide the agents with that ability.
Got it. Okay.
If they're members of the Chamber. Right? So it's smart for them.
Yeah.
And so the Mesquite is part of our board, and some of them put the stuff in the MLS, but most of their stuff is in their MLS.
So if you're not participating in Mesquite, how do you know... If you're not part of their board, how do you know what's for sale if you're here in Las Vegas?
So this is why I would say it's smarter to put it all in one.
Yeah.
Because I can go to any one of those third-party portals and I can pull up the properties there.
Oh, I got
You see what now?
Yes.
I'm not searching in a controlled real estate
Yes, yeah.
database. I'm going to these other sites.
Yeah.
I can get the same information. I can figure it out. I can even figure out what the agent is, and I can call them and I can go show it if they'll give me the key or let me in. But that's really what it comes down to.
Yeah. What else do you see happening on your board?
On my watch?
On your watch, yeah.
I'm hoping that we just have a congruent board that we can move fluid and go through that stuff. There's been some, I don't want to say animosity, but there's been some misunderstanding between the MLS board and the board. And I'd like to get that ironed out so it's very clear the roles and the lanes that each are running in. And then we want to start some new stuff, technology-wise, different things like that for communicating. I've talked to Wendy, the CEO, about doing a weekly podcast
cool.
from the board
Yeah,
so the
that's a
members
great
can
idea.
listen and know what's going on so we can stay more out there, stuff like that.
That's how many members do you have today? Do you
So
know?
we're over 17,000 here in Las Vegas or Southern Nevada.
And how many of those members are like engaged and actively working, would you say?
I couldn't really tell you, but I mean, there's a fair amount that never even log into the MLS.
Yeah.
And, I don't understand necessarily why somebody would have a real estate license and not do anything with it. But I do understand, like, if you've gotten it, why would you want to give it up? But you can hang it on ice, so to speak, where you have less fees with the board and stuff. But maybe they like the training, they like the tools, they like the different stuff. But the neat thing is in our market is if you do work, it doesn't matter. You'll make money.
Yeah.
It's just you have to choose to do it.
So is the office open and everything's back to normal after, or are you guys still doing a lot of virtual?
Yeah, so there is a lot of virtual going on. We had made a decision with just before they really put the mask mandate back in place, we made a decision that we were going to end the virtual stuff. We wanted people to come back down to the board. The governor put in another mask mandate. We immediately went back to, we'll make it the choice of the committee chair. And so some things are meeting live. A lot of things are meeting via Zoom. Our board meetings are being broadcast over a Zoom
Hybrid?
link too. Yeah, so we're doing hybrid stuff.
Yeah.
So we're adapting. Some of the C classes are still done through Zoom. We're having live classes. There's a lot of frustration with that. You go in for 3 hours, you got to wear your mask, all that stuff. But yeah, the classes are still full. People are coming in and getting their C's.
Well, and your installation it's what, after 2 years, right? Because was Tom's installation?
Tom didn't. Tom had an
live
installation.
Okay, it was
because because he was present in 2019, but the installation was in 2018.
That's true. Yeah.
Aldo didn't really get one. And so we're coming back.
That's exciting.
4 seasons on the 6th. And
Yeah.
it'll be good.
Yeah. And so are we all, I know I have a sequined colored mask that I get to wear with my dress. Yeah.
You're the MC.
I know. I'm excited about that. Super excited. Thank you for allowing me that opportunity. Super excited to celebrate your day. So one thing I wanted to chat about was just talking through the COVID, and because I forgot, like, this is, as I sat down with Wendy and Vanina, she's like, this is kind of our first attempt to get back, not attempt, but this is coming back live, and you forget how, because it feels kind of normal today, but business in and of itself, how do you feel business was affected, your business specifically, through coming out of COVID, or if we're not even really coming out, but going through COVID, the pandemic?
I saw a couple different views of things. I saw the agent that was paranoid, scared, locked themselves in their house, made no money, and then I saw the agent that went to work every day, made a lot of money. They were smart about it. Maybe they worked from home and they wore their masks. They got out there and they made a ton of money because the sales didn't drop, and if anything, it increased. And then you saw a lot of people that were just kind of stuck in the middle. I went to work every day. Initially, it seems like I've been remodeling a house forever.
You're right, actually, because I remember
I
COVID.
went into one of my rental units and it needed to be cleaned up and do tile and stuff. So I was able to leave my condo every day and drive someplace and go. And I'd work from the backyard or whatever, hang out with Mark, who was doing the work, do a little bit of work. But it got me out of the house. And then when that was done, I came to the office. And so I've been going and trying to live normal as much as you can.
Yeah.
And I remember when we did our awards last year, how many people came in and go, "Oh, it's so good to be out." And I was thinking, what do you mean it's so good to be out? I've been out. You know what I mean? But you realize that people have really been locked up and sheltered up. It was a scary time when it first came down. You didn't know what was going to happen. And thank goodness real estate was deemed essential. And thank goodness the market's been doing what it's been doing, especially looking at the economy and everything else that's going on. We seem to, and I don't like to use the word bubble, but we almost seem to be in this protective bubble, so to speak. It's really been good.
Yeah. Well, and I think some of that has to do with, and I don't know if this was the division or LVR or if it was the political aspect of it, but because there were certain states that did not deem real estate as essential, right? And I know from a lending standpoint, I talked to some of those loan officers and they're like, "I can't do anything." I'm like, "What do you mean?" Like, I can't originate a loan because there's really nobody wants to pull any equity out. There really is none because they didn't have the equity that they do today. They didn't have any purchase transactions to do because nobody was selling any homes. So,
and I heard that too, like New Mexico, I know they weren't deemed essential.
Yeah.
But I don't know, and I'd be curious to find out how long that actually lasted.
Yeah.
Because the market is so hot, really. I mean, there's the demand, and it's all across the country.
Yeah.
It's the shortage of homes. It's just really weird how all of a sudden we just end up with supply issues in everything.
Yeah. Yeah.
From housing to
paint,
sand and paint. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, but I wonder how long they were deemed unessential.
We should check that out for Real Estate Exposed.
Right.
That in as a stat.
Right. So
those things, it's not factual on there though.
It's not factual. We'll make it up. It'll be fine. That's the other podcast we do.
Right.
But so we were really lucky. And I think
I agree.
Everybody wants to take credit for it. I think our political action committee did a lot with communications with the governor. Chris Bishop was president of the state association. He was instrumental in it. I mean, really the worst thing that happened to real estate during that period of time was that you couldn't do an open house.
Which is ironic, right? Because how
Nobody
many
wants to do them.
Exactly. Yeah. Today we're like, okay, I know the weather's hot. We're going to, they're like, well, I got to wait till the weather warms up. Okay. It's warm now. Now
I
it's
gotta
like,
wait
it's
till
too
it cools
cold.
off.
Now it's too cold.
Yeah.
That's the love of Las Vegas and our open houses.
Yeah. It was everybody's only way that they could survive. It was almost like they were deemed inessential at that point. But
yeah, I remember that in the offices. So can we do open houses now? No. Now we can. You ready? No, I got to figure out what to do with my kids.
Yeah.
They're homeschooling now. Anyway, so what do you think about the market? Let's talk a little bit about that. Because I think there definitely is like a tier of, you've got some that are like housing crisis 2022, and then you have some that are, no, we're just going to continue to thrive and it's going to be great. So where do you stand on that?
I think and we're kind of already seeing it, but I'm not sure if it's seasonal or if it's really the trend we're heading to. We'll have a cooling off on the increase in prices.
Yeah.
I don't see a massive crash. That's why I don't like to use the word bubble. I don't think we're in a housing bubble where that's going to pop. And the reason being is because we don't have the inventory.
Yeah.
And not even only don't we have the inventory, we don't have enough houses for everyone to live in. And so it's not like if there was a mass amount of people that put them up for sale tomorrow that it would affect prices drastically. They would sell.
Yeah.
I mean, they're not going to sit on the market because we need them. And they're not building them fast enough, which is a good thing too, because we're not going to overbuild, I don't think. So I think we're in for another good 5 years before we see anything major, slowdowns or whatever. But I hope the prices stabilize a little bit and don't get too out of control. And that's a lot just because I'd like some of these owner occupants and these first time home buyers and stuff to be able to get into homes and not compete with some of these hedge funds and be able to afford them. Yeah.
So when you say stable, is that, we've had what percentage of increase in Vegas?
About 22-23%.
So stable would be 3% or just net 0%?
Just 3 to 5% increase maybe.
That's normal, right?
Yeah, but or even just stay pretty
the same.
Stable. Yeah.
Yeah.
But the one thing that I think can really affect that would be interest rates.
Yeah, I agree.
Right, because that affects buying power.
Mm-hmm.
And if you don't have buying power to be able to pay the price prices have to come down to where people can do that. There is still a lot of cash coming into our market. There are a lot of people selling stuff for a lot of money in other states and coming here. But it'd be interesting to know, is all that stuff being bought cash? Because if that's being financed at all, that could affect the people paying those. Yeah. So it could have a trickle-down effect.
But I don't know. How do you, because if rates do go up, are you saying that maybe these sellers, they wouldn't just decrease, they just wouldn't list as high as they're listing today?
Well, it depends if you have to sell your home, right? So the thing there's two things that when you're listing a house as an agent or whatever, as an agent really, that determine the price and stuff is the price you set and the motivation of that seller. Mm-hmm. Right? If there's no motivation, then they can sit on that price and it doesn't sell. But if they're highly motivated and have to sell, then they got to reduce that price.
Yeah. But with rates and everything going up, I do see that to be something that might stall the market a little bit, because we saw that this year, right? There was a moment in time, a couple months, like rates just peak for whatever reason into like the high threes. And then all of a sudden it was a little bit slow coming out of it, but you notice there was a little bit of a slowdown in just pre-quals and purchases for no reason really. And then all of a sudden the rates drop back down and, there goes the frenzy of buying and demand and all that fun stuff.
Yeah. I was talking with somebody last night, young guy, I'm not representing him, his mom is, but was talking to him and about another house, and it's a little bit above the range that you want to do. You're going to do his loan, by the way. Oh, awesome. You already know that. Oh. They've already made application.
Oh, okay, perfect.
But we were talking about it, and he's like, well, if we wait a little bit, maybe the prices will come down. And so everybody's focused on the price of the home and not that interest rate. And that interest rate is actually the most important thing, I think, in determining the buying power of that.
Well, we've talked about it, where we were in '08, the rates were at the 6% range. Even if the price points were $100,000 lower than we are today, it's the same payment.
Yeah.
Right. And then if you even look at, the argument could be made, well, yeah, but you're going to be paying more in interest. Not really. It's the same interest, just because it's a lower amount, it's a higher interest rate. You actually pay more.
And actually the cost of the house, you're paying more for the house. You're paying more on the principal side and less on the interest
Correct.
side. The other one, you paid a little bit more on the interest side, but less on the principal side. And it almost comes out to be the same.
Exactly. Yeah.
So
and that's one thing I've actually a call this morning, which is why I was a little bit late. The call this morning was a lady who just said, I've been listening to a lot of news and they're telling me that if I don't have to buy, it's not the right time to buy. Just wait. I'm like, what are you going to wait for? Mm-hmm. She's a first time home buyer. She's like, well, I don't know, but I mean, it's a seller's market. And I'm like, what does that mean to you? Like, you've never bought a home before. And she's like, well, the sellers, they can demand anything that they want. I'm like, I don't necessarily, we're selling, we're buying homes. There are buyers that are buying homes today.
Yeah.
Maybe it's not the right time for you. That's one thing, but don't stick your head in the sand just because you heard somebody say.
3 months ago, the seller could demand what they wanted because buyers were willing to pay whatever they could to get into a house because it was that frenzy of trying to get one. Now, there's still multiple offers on properties. There's just not 20 multiple offers. Maybe like 2, 3. So strong offers are getting there. I'm not seeing you having to waive the appraisal contingency and everything. You don't have to do those crazy things to get into a house.
Right.
And I don't think you did back then, except other people were willing to do it. Mm-hmm. So, but it's
set the market.
I think the right time to buy is when you're ready and you're in a position to do it.
Absolutely. And I think some of that is education too. I think a lot of people read too much or listen to too much news or podcast and they hear different things. And I think really partnering with the right lender and realtor is something that's super important, especially if you're thinking about purchasing a home. Mm-hmm. So I want to just talking about first-time home buyers and younger people. So your son is actually in the industry. Part of your group and obviously huge in also the board. What is that like for you?
He had no choice.
You also pushed him into being.
I put him as vice chair of YPN. And it's good for him. It's like I wouldn't have done it if somebody didn't show me how to do it. So it's neat that he has a lot of mentors, so to speak, that have been down that path. So it makes it easy for him to know the path. Yeah.
What is that like though to work with him? Because I think about even my daughter, right, Sydney, I'm like, I mean, she wants to be a marine biologist, but how cool would that be if she got to be my sidekick for like ever?
Yeah. So it is neat.
Yeah.
I love being able to come to the office, see him. I don't work with him on a daily basis. I didn't train him in real estate. Like he asked me questions, I answer him. But one of the blessings for me was Chris Bishop coming on to Signature. And I'd said to Chris, and Chris is really good at this. The second I say I want to do something with somebody, he does it with them. So I said, it'd be great. I'm going to have Tyson come work with me and he can help me mentor and coach and do this kind of stuff. And I'll build a little team around him. Next thing you know, he's Chris's team lead.
So
I
just
said,
plant the little seed out there.
I said, Monica would make a great assistant and help me with this kind of stuff. Next thing you know, Monica's helping him with all this stuff. So, he implements very quickly and that's good.
Yeah.
But the blessing in that is the fact that I worked for my dad in the restaurant business. And I loved working with my dad and I hated working with my dad.
Yeah.
Because he would tell me how to cut an onion because I was doing it wrong. But yet when he showed me, it was the same size squared cube as I did, right? But it wasn't the proper way. And so you kind of have that push and pull. Well, Chris has been able to work with him and train him and do that kind of stuff. And then I get to talk to him on a weekly basis, a coaching call.
Yeah.
And so it's a different aspect. And I get to work with him, but I don't have to manage him.
Yeah, and that's kind of a cool thing too, that you get to coach him, right? Because I mean he obviously he watched you, right, doing the things that you've done, and he's seen your great success and things like that. And I think for that's the ultimate coaching and mentoring opportunity, is to see that from being a kid to watch his parent or whatever go through that type of success. And so what an awesome opportunity for you to be able to coach him.
I get more out of it than he does, I think.
Yeah. I think
sure.
though in coaching, and this is kind of sideline on the coaching aspect of it, because I have been coaching as well. And it's one of those things where you get into it and you're like, man, I mean, personally for myself, just getting started, I was like, I'm kind of like, I don't know what the hell I'm really doing, but I'm just going to wing it. And we're just going to go with it. And let's just see how this works. And then you just watch them grow and you see all this stuff. And I get so excited about that. Like to your point, saying like, I get more out of my coaching than I think they do. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? And so how does that work? Do you talk to him every week then on a...
Yep.
And you have them on like your
yeah. So I do coaching
or?
calls. I coach a few people. I coach on Mondays and Fridays, and he's just in one of the time slots. And so we have a standing appointment. We get on and do the coaching.
And so is it like weird? Like, do you guys just talk about business, or because your coaching is like?
Well,
right?
when you coach anybody, you get to know them a little bit more, right?
Yeah, I agree.
Because a lot of the outside forces, their relationships, their friends, their family, anything else, the dynamics outside of it actually affect their business.
Yes.
And so you start to learn all that stuff too. So yeah, there's a fair amount of business and the planning and stuff like that. And then there's, you also get to catch up on things as well.
But you don't use it as like catching up on like father-son stuff. That is
sometimes.
That is. Oh, do you?
Yeah, sometimes
okay.
it's. I mean, that's what's important that day. You know what I mean?
For him. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. It just kind of goes that direction. I mean, you don't. Sometimes you want to you want them, whether it's your son or your daughter or anybody else, you want them to feel comfortable. Yeah, or your mom.
Yeah.
You want them to feel comfortable talking to you,
yes,
right?
Yeah.
About whatever, and you want it to be a safe space for that.
Yeah.
And so sometimes, like there's some people I coach, their business is doing better because we're coaching, but we don't do anything to do with business because every time they commit to do something in business, they never do it because they're committing to do it because they think I want them to do it. But sometimes they just need somebody to talk to and bounce things off of.
Yeah.
So we just have a conversation.
It's like therapy,
you know what I mean?
sometimes.
And then sometimes I try to push little ideas in there and see if they run with some stuff, but most of the time they don't.
Yeah.
But their production goes up.
Yeah.
And it's I think just knowing somebody else is watching, they work harder.
Yeah, I would agree. And you've been coaching for what? Because you've just brought this. It's been about a year, or through COVID.
So
did you coach?
I've got many of them that are in their second year with me now. Mm-hmm. But way back when I was with the other franchise, I actually coached brokers. Alex was coaching brokers, and he was kind of my manager, so he'd set them up and take a portion of it. Uh-huh. But I'd coach them because I was growing my brokerage, and people want to know how to do it, and so. But
here at Signature, it is something that it is part of the growth plan here, right? Is to get your agents enrolled. Do you coach anybody outside of Signature?
Currently, no. Would I'd be open to it. We made when Chris came on, one of the things I wanted to do is really up our game.
Yeah.
And when we talk about it, it's talked about in our industry that the professionalism in our industry is not, and everyone has these great ideas in how we could fix the industry. Well, I don't think you can fix the industry unless you can fix your own house.
That's
right.
True.
And so we said, how do we make our agents better and more productive and stuff? And that's when we came up with the apprentice program and the coaching and the mentoring and all that stuff and put all those into place. And that's where it originally launched. It also did wonders for the agent.
Yeah.
It increased our company dollar, not only in transactions, but also the fees that they pay for the coaching.
Yeah. Plus your attrition too, right? Because I think if your agents feel connected, it's harder for them to leave, right? And if they know that you guys are looking over them through that mentor, apprentice, and then obviously coaching, they're going to stay here.
People leave because they feel like they're missing something.
Yeah.
Right?
100%.
They're not getting the support. They're not getting the help, whatever it is.
Yeah.
And people are vulnerable to be poached or recruited to another company.
Yeah.
When they feel like they're missing something and this person fills that gap.
Yeah.
Right? And so, if you're communicating with your agents on a regular basis, you're coaching them, you're staying involved in their business, there'd be no reason for them to leave, especially if you're a good coach and it's working because they're doing better and better.
Yeah. So how do you get your people to coach with you? Are you advertising that, or do they just know that you're Brandon Roberts? And
kind
and
of a big
everybody
deal.
wants to be kind of a big deal. Yeah.
No, so we'll bring it up and we'll talk about it, and a lot of it's come from the people that are being coached. They'll tell people.
Refer, yeah.
Yeah. I'm in this interesting thing. I love the coaching, but I don't really have the time to do a lot of it. Just any time during so I have certain
blocks,
slots that I can fit people into, and that's why I do like Monday afternoon and Friday mornings.
Is it going to get worse or harder for you as you go into?
It would, because, and this is the only thing. I don't want to have a standing appointment with you that I always have to move, and I'm finding that I'm having to move it more and more because of board issues, right? And so I'm kind of winding it down a little bit. And working with a select few. We got great coaches here. Chris Vaughn is coaching, Todd coaches, you coach. Mm-hmm. There's plenty of people that can get the support that need. It doesn't have to be me.
Yeah. But everybody wants Brandon.
But I look forward to getting back to it after my my commitment with the board.
Yeah. Couple of years. Well, cool. Yeah. Well, if you do need any assistance or any of those coaching with Brandon need a sidekick, I'm happy to help.
And you're
in
amazing.
That
case. You're due to do another group call.
Yeah, I am actually. I was on a good roll, like at least once a quarter, but I do have to jump on there. I am doing the Wheels Up, which is going to be kind of a cool. I'm going to take a lot of your information and I'm going to put it into a book and call it my own book.
My information.
Or wherever you get it
I took it from someone else.
You did? Perfect. And wherever that originated from, that's where we're going to be creating that book. Well,
whoever that was very smart.
Exactly. Thank you for whoever that was. We appreciate it. So I'm going to wrap this up. First, I just want to say thank you so much. I mean, truly, I adore you, and you're really just not just a great friend to me, but mentor. I pick anytime you speak to me and you say I always get something from you.
Well, I love being your friend. The mentor thing for you scares me because I think you're pretty amazing yourself. I look up to you.
Yeah, thank you. I really do. I always, like, if I have some big decision I have to make, I always try to, I'll even tell you, hey, I need to schedule a call. Fortunately for me, it's I don't have to pay as much, and
you don't have to pay ever.
It's usually a bottle of wine. But I want to do rapid fire. But one thing that me, I'm a bookworm, and so what are your top 3 books that you have read in the last year that you would say?
So I don't read a lot of books.
Audible.
Right? I'll tell you, Profit First was probably very instrumental. You recommended that book to me. There's another one called, it'll come back to me, hold on. It's by Tom Freeze, Question-Based Selling.
Oh, yeah.
That, to me, is the Bible of sales, all through questions.
Question-based selling.
Uh-huh. Okay. And then the other one would be The Compound Effect.
Yeah,
by Darren Hardy.
And that was not very business. I mean, that can be all around. It's not specific to business.
Yeah, it's just doing the little things over and over again that get you the results. And that's always been how with discipline, you can achieve anything.
100%. I was going to wear my shirt that says discipline creates certainty. So I believe that wholeheartedly. Okay. So rapid fire. So whatever's top of mind for you, just 5 questions. So Apple or Android?
Apple.
Okay.
Why'd you even ask that? You know that.
This is going to be my normal for my every other interviewer that I do. Book or Audible? I think you answered that. Audible or podcast?
That's a good one. I like podcasts.
Yeah, podcast. Okay. YouTube or Instagram?
YouTube.
And Raiders or VGK?
VGK.
Really?
Yeah.
I thought you were going to go for Raiders because you're not a huge VGK.
No, I would say if you want to move to a new city or open a franchise or sporting franchise in a new city, and you want to build a good fan base, the Knights wrote the book on it.
Yeah.
If you want to move to a city, build a good fan base, or not build a good fan base, the Raiders wrote that book.
Really?
I mean, as much as I'm trying to like them, it's hard.
Really?
Yeah. I mean, it's just hard.
Because of the organization, or because I think they had already kind of a negative perceived fan base.
Without going too political, they were the first sports franchise to eliminate fans during COVID, and I get it.
Yeah.
Right? But when you spent the kind of money that people spent on seat licenses and then the tickets and not be able to attend it, it sucked, right? The first year.
Yeah.
Then the next year,
Was their loss, really?
Yeah. Then the next year they say, well, everybody in the stadium has to be vaccinated.
Yeah.
Well, there's a lot of people in town that aren't necessarily, and now they couldn't go to the games. Yes, great, they'll buy the tickets back, but now that's 2 years that
Nobody
you
can
spent
get
all
in.
this money and you can't use it, right?
Yeah.
And then the issue with their coach, and whatever he wrote, it's probably appalling and stuff, but it was 12 years ago, long before he worked for the organization, and they were quick to get that axed. And I just think they used to be the bad boys of the sports and didn't care about the renegades or whatever, and they are wimps.
Yeah.
But it's still a great thing for this
Raiders?
Yeah, they're great, and I've been to a few games now, and
The stadium's cool.
It's neat, but it is packed with the visiting team's fans.
But I think it's just because you're here in Vegas too, right? You have an opportunity
It
to come
wasn't
in.
that way with the Knights.
You don't. Yeah, I agree.
Because why? Because people didn't sell their tickets because
you
they could
had
go to the games, and they built those relationships with those players and
agree
that
on that.
team.
Yes.
And yeah, so
I do
definitely
agree
VGK.
on that. I mean, there definitely is a fan base because of the teams. In fact, one of those team members is no longer part of the team, and I do
makes it
feel
tough to
like
go, doesn't it?
It does. I'm not gonna lie. I'm getting over it, but I do like Leonard. Anyway, so I again
So
just
much
want
for
to thank
rapid fire.
you. I know, right? But if you like this podcast, make sure that you like, subscribe, and then share it. But also check us out because Brandon and I co-host along with Vaughn and Abala. We host. We will be hosting for sure this week. Real Estate Exposed, which is aired on Fridays at 1:00. So make sure you check us out there, and then stay tuned to other podcasts that I have later in the month. Bye.